Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar for it's probably time to replace your traditional CRM. We've got some new people joining as we go, but we'll start now. So if I can introduce you to who's going to be speaking today, then we've got, firstly, we're going to be hearing from Alan Reed, who's a very well-known independent non-profit consultant, has been around the market for a long, long time. And also my colleague Jeremy and myself, I'll be rounding up and summarising what we talk about. Some etiquette to begin with. So we're recording the session, so you don't need to take copious notes, and we'll distribute a link to the session probably Wednesday, Thursday this week. If you've got any questions, please use the chat box, and we'll cover some of these at the end. We've got some FAQs that have been raised thus far anyway, and we'll cover those, but also we'll cover the any particular Q&A for your specific situation if you want to put those in the chat box. What we're going to cover. So firstly, we'll be hearing from Alan, and he'll be giving some results of some questions we've been asked recently and some sort of state of the state of the market conversations. So some feedback, what people are finding, what's important, what they want to do, what they can't currently do, and so on. Then we'll be looking at what is achievable within technology projects within the associations and membership space, and then some examples of some real journeys that we've been on with some of our customers. And then I'll be summarising that at the end with some pitfalls and some questions and answers that we can take you through. Then, as I say, we'll have Q&A. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Alan, and he'll be giving us some feedback from the surveys that we've been doing.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Steve. So good morning, everybody. Alan Reed. I'm just going to go through some insights that we've been getting. I hope for some of you it'll help you understand you're not the Lone Ranger when it comes to some of the project challenges you might be experiencing. So let me just dive straight into it. So first of all, we spent the last 6 months doing quite an in-depth study and analysis of associations in the UK and Ireland, and we were asking about their technology challenges and how they see the future. We've had responses and telephone conversations with 152 associations. About half of them, a little under half, had up to 50 staff. A little under the other half had up to about 100 to 200 staff, and then only a tiny fraction had above 200 staff. So pretty representative across the sector. We asked them a lot of questions. We went to some depth, but we were asking them about the systems that they use and how long have they had them. How many systems do you need to manage members? This is quite a key thing. So if you're using lots and lots of different technologies to do things like marketing and comms, or managing a CPD scheme, or managing your analytics, all of that is a factor of how you manage your business and your member relationships. How much money did you spend? One of the benefits being in an independent consultant is you can ask people rude questions like that, and they'll actually tell you for the good of the sector. What are your main challenges and your main goals? How do you see the future? So very interesting results. From my own experience, I've done these kind of surveys over a period of years, going back to the 1990s. In some ways, it's kind of disappointing that the same challenges that were experienced 20 odd years ago are still very prevalent in the sector today. In other areas, the picture is much better for associations than it ever has been. So let me go through that. So first of all, when we were talking about what are the main technology challenges you were facing, the top 4 responses have pretty much stayed the same over many years. So first of all, pretty much everyone has bad and disconnected data. the view of no single view of the truth, nearly 70%. And that's, of course, a property of using lots of different systems or having poor connections between your engagement channels, like your website or campaign marketing, and the CRM that people are using to run their business areas. Too many systems, lack of integration, connectivity issues, really nearly 60% with those issues still being experienced. And not disconnected, poor staff take up. So staff feeling like they're wasting their time, largely through things like reconciling one system with another, or pretending to be a joined up website, but actually behind the scenes, the staff are frantically typing into something, or frantically manually sending emails when the system should be doing it for them. Very unrewarding, leading to lots of staff churn and low morale. And then a poor member experience online. A really astonishing 77% said that they felt that the member experience online is less than their members expected. Members are now modern consumers like all of us, and the online experience lacks personalization, they felt, in their own organization, and lacks targeting and relevance. So somebody who's been a member for 20 years goes to the website, and their experience will be almost identical to someone who's just come into your world yesterday and has registered and is using the website. Their landing page will be the same, the content they see will be the same, and that, of course, is just not good enough. So part of that as well, we asked, what are your drivers to support your association's mission? What are your tech drivers? This becomes very important when you're looking for money to spend on your next steps, whatever it is. You have to relate what your organization is trying to achieve to the money you're asking for in order to justify it. It can't just be about the technology. So the top 4 drivers. This one we like a lot, but people are recognizing that proving member value through personalized relevant comms, personalized engagement is the biggest factor. Then after that, improving the website experience. Pretty much everyone feels, as I've just said, that the website experience lacks that personalization and relevance and that immediacy of content. A lot of organizations we spoke to are actually generating the most amazing content, full of industry insights, white papers, reports, and news, but then they're not able to serve it up properly to members. It's either on the front page or you can't find it. And once you get beyond kind of 10 or 15 pieces, and these organizations have thousands, then they're losing the value from having all of this content by that lack of personalization. And then, of course, they want to reduce wasted staff time where people are compensating for poor system support. And then most organizations see that improving data quality is a key mechanism, one of your main tools to be able to improve your member engagement, improve your member value, and streamline what you're doing with your staff's time. So we then asked a kind of revealing question. We asked, how long has your system been in place? And just to go through the results quickly, the great majority at the bottom there have had their systems kind of heading up to 40-50% have had their systems in place for less than 5 years. And then the other half have had their systems in place for more than 5 years, going up to a couple who've had their systems in place for over 20 years. One of the things that we asked alongside that was, how many satellite systems do you need? How many bolt-ons, how many workaround systems do you need to compensate for your core CRM not doing everything you need? And there's pretty much a straight line correlation. The older your system is, then more likely you are to have bolt-ons for marketing and analytics, business intelligence and dashboarding, automation and workflow, and then business areas like exams, CPD, events, training, and of course, being able to move data back and forth for the website. So actually older systems tend to have 10 and 12 bolt-ons, which leads to massive technology debt, and you spend your whole life fighting your systems instead of servicing your members. So we found that to be quite insightful. And then we asked, what are your main priorities? If we just focus on the technology for a minute and your CRM strategy, and by CRM we mean everything you do with your members, your data management and your tools for managing data engagement with your members, including the CRM portal. So what are your main priorities? And we gave them a list to choose from, and then when we scored the list across over 100 organizations, 152 organizations, what we found that most people are trying to achieve with their technology is the single view of the truth, which after more than 25 years of working in the membership sector, I can say is the most enabling thing you can achieve as an association with your technology and data. If you do achieve your data in one place or ending up in one place and being able to be analyzed and used, it's incredibly empowering. If you fail to achieve it, you will be fighting against that in pretty much everything that you do. So that deserves its place at the top. And then the second item there is what enables you to achieve the first item. So having the fewest possible technologies is seen as a key driver. I agree with that. And in modern systems, that's where it's become easier for associations these days to achieve those things. And then number 3 deserves its place there. Actually, the number 4 we found interesting, almost without exception now. We used to have people talking about the value of on-prem and on-premise solutions and so on, almost entirely gone away. The market has entirely moved to a cloud-based preference for all sorts of very valid reasons. We hardly spoke to anyone who was anywhere else but moving things to the cloud. Okay, moving on from there just quickly. So summarizing some of the elements on the positive side, and this is where we see it being better for associations than it has been in the past in many ways. There's a movement in the past to prioritizing cloud-based platforms, and I put platforms in single quotes there, essentially systems that are designed to be changed to meet your needs. No longer do you have to do development projects or bespoke coding or anything like that. There is a really excellent ecosystem for the association world now of systems that already have 90% of what you want on day one. But then the changes that you require and your ongoing changes can be adapted within the system while keeping you on the upgrade path and not requiring you to go off and do development projects and so on. So associations are more empowered with their choice of solutions. There's a real move towards a single high value partnership model. Up until about 2015 or so, most association CRM projects had that classic separation of the back office being done by a CRM provider of whichever technology, and then a separate provider for the web portal, and maybe a separate provider and technology for the marketing. That's moved now towards a single partnership model. And what's essentially happened is that the majority of CRM providers, or a significant minority of the CRM providers in the marketplace, have gone off and acquired digital agencies or grown their capacity to become a digital agency in their own right, so they can offer everything as a one-stop shop. And that's a much lower risk proposal for associations, and projects tend to be more sophisticated and can do a lot more for less cost in that model. Essentially, that means that as part of a project now, most associations can look across the divide between the CRM web and plot it all as one user journey, as one series of processes. It also means that the ecosystem of current providers are genuinely good at niche areas. If you pick the right one, where it's they're very good at B2B membership, they're very good at events, training, CPD, those kind of things, including member engagement, scoring, and marketing automation. So just to emphasize what a typical CRM project means now, when we talk about how you might move from an older system to a newer system, first of all, this is what most CRM projects looked like up until about 8 years ago, something like that. Essentially a series of separate systems, perhaps with their own separate web element or web portal, and the member data spread across all of those different areas, being very hindering for the association. Where that's moved to is that it's moved to a much more of a single system model where there are modules to do pretty much everything that you want, and in one place, without integration, without data being copied around all over the place. And then, of course, that's wrapped around with online portals for everything. So if there's a back office membership element, there's a website portal for it, CPD element, website portal element for it, all essentially being one system or one logical system without a huge amount of different suppliers being involved and all of the problems that are associated with that. The final thing I'll say is that what we've seen as well is that there's been a real change on the spending model. Let me come to that. But part of there is that what clients have been demanding primarily in recent years has become more sophisticated and much better for associations and members. So first of all, moving to the cloud, great, talked about that. Organizations are now demanding a modular approach with association-specific functionalities in one place. People aren't tolerating having to go off and buy separate systems for exams or CPD or member engagement scoring or whatever it is. They're insisting on their suppliers providing all of it in one place, and then expecting that their project will be based on a fully integrated model. We'll get to that later. We'll do the website later. We'll do the multi-channel marketing later. We'll do the analytics later. No, that should all be part of the same project, so that all of these questions could be tackled as a whole and in one go. That's had some benefits on the costing model in recent years. The old-fashioned costing model used to be that associations would spend a huge amount of money in years 1 and 2, spend next to nothing for the next few years, however long that is. The systems would become out of date, staff would stop using it, work outside in spreadsheets, member expectations would increase, and then they would say, we need to change systems, and then they spend the next 2 years and huge sums of money changing systems. What's happened in recent years with the rise of platform solutions and single vendor projects is that that's changed, so that you still have your upheaval at the beginning, where you're changing to your modern platform and your true partner supplier, but then your spend is the brown line going across, where it's steady as she goes, investment every year, and you're avoiding the second blue peak. You're not doing that anymore, where you have to then replace. So steady investment instead of upheaval and revolution every 5 years. Much better for associations than in the past. So great. Well, with that, what I'll do is I'll hand over to Jeremy to talk about some organisations that have actually made the journey. So thanks a lot, Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Alan. I'm just going to flip my slides over. I think I need to go there. Perfect. So good morning, everybody. My name's Jeremy Jaley. I'm Business Development Lead here at Smart Impact, and it's great pleasure to have an opportunity to talk to you this morning. What I'm going to try and do is bring alive some of the benefits of adopting a modern system, but at the same time highlight some of the key challenges that our clients faced before they decided to implement a new membership management system with Smart Impact. And I think some of this is going to be reinforcing the market level information that Alan has just described. But I suspect that this might also be describing things that are familiar to people on this call. And it's familiar ground for Smart Impact as well, because the vast majority of the organisations that we work with were using traditional CRM systems before they worked with us. And some of these are legacy systems built on older technology. Actually, the two case studies that I have today are both in that camp. But believe it or not, we also see some organizations using Dynamics 365 or older versions of Dynamics, which is our technology stack, in a way that makes it a bit of a legacy CRM system because of how it is implemented. So in broad brushstroke terms, virtually all of our customers have had some of the challenges that I'm going to be discussing this morning. Before I look at the case studies, I just want to start with the mindset that we bring to our projects. And if you've been on a Smart Impact webinar before, you'll know that we like to stress that these projects to implement new technology are often just as much about mindset as they are about the specific technology and tools that we're implementing. So on the screen here, I've listed some of the questions that we ask customers when we initiate projects. So we nearly always start with, what are your strategic goals? So how will an improved system enable you to help members better? How will the new system enable you to support your public policy or societal objectives? And nearly all the organisations that we work with are charities and therefore have a societal aspect to their work. And what is the organisation focused on at the moment and why? And how will a new system enable you to better focus on those particular challenges? Then, of course, we look at what problems organisations are trying to solve, and sometimes these are technical challenges. Our system can't do this, or our system was poorly implemented, or the system isn't fit for purpose and doesn't meet our needs. All pretty common technical challenges. But more often than not, they're business challenges that are being impacted by technology. So organisations want to improve their processes. They want to digitise, move away from paper or spreadsheet-based processes, speed up the response times that they provide when dealing with member inquiries or questions, or improve the quality of the outcomes, improve the quality of the responses that they're providing. Those all sit in the camp of optimization, ways that a system can improve what you're already doing. But a lot of organisations are also looking at what I describe as digital transformation, bringing in new services, new offerings. So that might be growing a new income stream by launching a new product or service, or just doing something completely different to serve members in the modern world. There's lots and lots of examples of that going on at the moment. And finally, we always like to define what success looks like. So to understand what motivates the people who will be using the system, see what improvements that a new system will bring to help staff and help members to be more effective, but also to put in place the objective measures needed to support benefit realization for investing in a new system. And that's really crucial, because if you are investing time and money in a system improvement, it's very important to be able to explain to different people in the organisation why you're doing that. So your governance team will want to know how much you're planning to spend and how they're going to measure return on investment. Your management team will need to be able to measure the actual business benefits that the system delivers and how to communicate the impact of those benefits to their members and to staff. And your staff team will want to understand how the project will impact them and why they should invest their time and energy in a project which is likely to be disruptive. Implementing new technology is often a disruptive, change-focused activity, but getting staff to understand why you're doing it, absolutely critical. So we always begin our projects by asking these questions and really trying to understand the why of what our customers are looking to achieve. Now, I'm about to move into the case studies proper. To enable us to be quite warts and all in our descriptions of the challenges that we've helped organisations to overcome, we've decided to anonymise the case studies today. So we're not going to be talking about well, we are talking about specific clients, but we're not going to be naming those specific clients. But we have a large number of case studies available on our website. So to protect the innocent, we're going to be talking in broad brushstroke terms today. But if you want to go and find out about some of the specific projects that we have run and perhaps identify organisations that are similar to yourselves, you can access all of our case studies using the URL that's on the screen there. And we're going to look at two types of organisation. We're going to look at a professional awarding body. It's an organisation that has individual members and is primarily focused on providing qualifications or certifications actually to their members, so that their members are able to professionally practice. And then we're also going to look at a trade association, an organisation with corporate members, but a large workforce of employees within their member organisations that they're actually focused on interacting with. So it gives us a good opportunity to sort of talk about the two big types of organisation that we normally work with. So the first study is a professional body, as I said, an organisation that provides professional qualifications to its members, and this organisation's members are individuals. And I want to just start by talking about some of the technical challenges that this organisation was facing. So the incumbent system infrastructure was pretty typical of the types of system that organisations were buying about 10 years ago in the first half of the last decade. So it was an on-premises system, but they'd actually migrated the database and applications to a cloud hosting environment so that people were able to access the system by dialing in via a remote desktop connection. The central membership system itself was pretty big actually, and it was pretty versatile as well. It was a specialist system for membership-based organisations, so it managed their contacts and organisations, membership, subscriptions and their financial processes associated with membership, had a list of all of their event attendees, it had exams and certifications information in it, had information about CPD, had information about some awards that they gave out, prizes that they gave out to members, and then also, you know, like in most CRMs, a whole load of personal information about members, so dietary information, history of their education, notes of staff who had interacted with notes from staff who'd interacted with that member, and what, you know, things like personal interests that they had noted over time. The system was loosely integrated with their website and provided basic portal services. So there was the facility to update names and address information, for instance, so basic profile information, but the interface on the portal was pretty old school and clunky and slow. They also had the ability to manage GDPR preferences. I think this was something that they set up in about 2018, 2019, when GDPR was the hot topic in the sector. But actually there was a disclaimer on the portal that said it took about a week for any preference information that they captured to be reflected in any communications that they sent out, because they didn't actually trust that the integration between the portal and the CRM would always work. And I think what happened actually was an email got sent to an administrator to check that the preference information had been updated. Not very many members were really using it, so actually they set it all up, but it wasn't particularly well utilized. And very, very importantly, the CMS was not able to provide any personalization or website journey support based on information in the CRM. So content on the portal or the website was pretty much generic, irrespective of whether people had logged in or not. And so they really weren't able to use their data to create nice journeys for their members online. And they also had a load of other systems, most of which were cloud-based when we started working with them, to actually support engagement with members. So they had a separate CPD system, separate event system for registration, separate system for case management and complaints, a separate social media tool, separate email marketing systems. They had pretty much a separate system for everything. But what had happened that they'd adopted these systems, there had definitely been a drive to adopt modern cloud-based tools to support what they were doing, but they hadn't bothered to integrate any of those systems with either the CRM or membership portal, the legacy system, because the integration was just seen as too difficult a job. And I think that's understandable when you're dealing with a system which is primarily on-premises based and requires lots of complicated technical connectors to get it to work. But the upshot of this was there was loads of manual processes to keep different systems up to date, loads of import and export regimes between those different systems, so exporting data from one system and re-importing system of record information into CRM, and also lots of data sitting in undeleted spreadsheets on people's desktops, which was, you know, a bit of a data compliance risk, but also pretty inefficient use of people's time. So those were the technical challenges, and those challenges were really the challenges that staff were aware of, because they were the day-to-day challenges that they could see. But there were larger, more important business issues at stake because of those problems. So one big one was that membership numbers were stagnant. It wasn't like they were losing members in a large way, but they weren't managing to entice people to stay beyond the minimum amount of time that they needed to have an affiliation with that association, particularly around retired members. They felt they were able to provide a really nice offering to retired members, but they were just losing them at the end of their careers. They were dealing with lots and lots of complaints from members about the system. So people saying we're not able to find the right information, people saying that they had poor self-service experience, and lots of anecdotes that other organisations that their members were dealing with had much better online experiences. And all of this was resulting in a lot of time dealing with fairly disgruntled members complaining about what they perceived as pretty poor technology. Their communications were very generic, pray and spray style communications. This was because it was difficult to segment data properly in the CRM system, and in particular because they were using a separate email marketing system. They had some data in CRM that they were using and some data in the email marketing system, and trying to effectively segment and target was much more difficult. I really think that that's pretty much kryptonite to membership-based organizations, because what really differentiates membership organizations from most of the corporate businesses we interact with is that they know a lot about their members, and therefore they really can target and personalize communications better. But if they're not able to do that, then they're really sort of missing one of their key differentiators as a business. They had difficulties reporting, weren't able to get out the analytics, and lots of issues around their content. But perhaps more than anything, a real sense that people weren't actually absorbing their content, because they couldn't measure that people were. They didn't know what people were looking at, and they weren't convinced that people were able to find it in the first place already. So how did we address this and improve this situation for this organisation? So in terms of the project scope, a critical objective was to create a unified CRM and portal. That's very, very familiar territory to Smart Impact. Most of our organisations are looking for a unified CRM and portal as a sort of minimum entry requirement for engagement in 2024. They also wanted to decommission their existing system. So they were talking about a data migration of everything out of the old system into a new system, and to ditch all of the spreadsheet processes that they were using. And actually that notion of getting rid of spreadsheets became a bit of a mantra of the project, and a useful touchstone for everyone about what we were trying to achieve here to make people's lives better. And they also wanted to integrate what was called Dynamics 365 Marketing at the time, but is now called Dynamics 365 Customer Insights Journey, as their email marketing system, so that they could overcome those segmentation and disparate database challenges. So in terms of the overall approach, the project took about a year in total, and during the first 9 months, we undertook a discovery process. We really focused in on data migration. It wasn't just data migration from the legacy system, but that was the vast majority of it. But it was also identifying in the cloud-based systems they were using what data needed to be moved over to give them a full picture of their members. And then we started delivery by setting up core functionality in the new CRM to support their key processes, so membership, events, and that website portal interaction. And then after we delivered, I suppose, an MVP, it was a pretty big MVP, but after we delivered that MVP, we moved on to some other areas, integrations with some of those platforms, setting up their annual exam cycle. We deliberately planned the project so that we could go live with a system without having to implement exams, to buy us a little bit of space to implement exams after the first go live, because there was a very hard timescale around that we could work to. And then we also put in place a continuous improvement approach for continual development of the system with them. We call that evergreen services, and effectively it means that they knew they could rely on Smart Impact to provide a level of service and enhancement to their system over time once they'd gone live. There was also a lot of taking people within the business with us. So during discovery, we started with those questions that I started with and really asked them to challenge their business processes and to help their internal team to plan new and improved processes. We also supported them to undertake a programme of communications throughout the project, updating folks on how the project was going and what the impact of what we were delivering would be. We supported this specifically by being involved in some show and tell sessions where we were actually demoing things that we had configured. And we also made sure that our project management team was available to answer any questions so that people could address any campaigns. And we even met with a few member representatives. That doesn't happen on every single project that we undertake, but we absolutely encourage it if we can, because the organisation organised some focus groups. We sent consultants along to those focus groups, and it enabled us to listen to what our clients' members actually wanted from their new portal, which was, you know, really, really helpful in shaping what we were planning to deliver through that. So overall, the new system was much better able to support their processes. A lot of that was improvement. You know, it was processes they were already undertaking, but using all that myriad of different processes and spreadsheets, we built it all out into a single system. And that has enabled their staff to spend much more time focused on the business challenges that they wanted to be focused on. So a campaign to retain retired members is a big priority for them. They have already improved their communications and want to continue doing that. And actually one of the things they're looking at now is using AI content generation to speed up the creation of email and marketing collateral for their campaign activities. Right, so let me move on to the second case study, which is a trade association. So actually, we sort of start with the fundamentals here. The biggest problem that this organisation had with their system was that it was a traditional membership system, and it hadn't been designed at all for B2B marketing and B2B membership management. They basically taken an off-the-shelf membership system and implemented it, and it just didn't give them the flexibility that they needed to support what is a fairly complex organisational hierarchy, and through that quite a complicated relationship with employees working for organisation members. So they didn't have the ability to effectively identify and cultivate a lead contact within their organizations. They had lots and lots of orphaned data. So that was either people who had previously worked at the organization and left and therefore was sort of just dud data, or people who had unsubscribed from communications and it wasn't clear whether they were still at the organisation. So there's a real mistrust of what they were looking at whenever they looked at a list of individual contacts. And they found it very, very difficult to target groups in the sophisticated way that they felt they needed to. So for instance, because they had people's names and job titles, it was quite easy for them to create a segment which was all finance managers, but they couldn't combine that with information about the organization. So if you asked them to find all finance managers working in an organization with more than 500 employees, they just couldn't do it. And so they weren't able to segment the way they wanted to in an effective way. And it was also really difficult to get a holistic view of all the contacts at specific organizations, and therefore very difficult to deliver the level of targeting that they needed to be compelling. They also had a lot of, shall we call it, square pegging, so functionality designed for one-to-one customer relationships being used to support their B2B processes. A great example is invoicing. Like many trade associations, the amount they charged their members was based on how many employees that organization had, so it was based on their size, and they just couldn't find a way using the data they had to create a easy way to do that. So invoicing had to be managed completely manually through a spreadsheet, which was uploaded to their finance system and really didn't hit CRM at all, which meant they couldn't really see in CRM whether members had paid and they were up to date, which was obviously very, very challenging for regional managers and regional reps who wanted to know that kind of information before they went and spoke to people. And perhaps their biggest challenge was around gating content on their website. So they had a really nice, modern, content-focused website. Actually, it was, you know, one of the nicest sort of public-facing sites we've seen. But their members portal was shocking, and it was just shocking because they could never get it to work, and so they hadn't invested in it at all. Originally, only one contact per organisation could access the site, but that meant that one organisation in a member organisation with sometimes thousands of employees was responsible for getting the information and disseminating it out, which was just not how they worked. So then they decided to let everyone register for the site, but that obviously meant that non-members could access exactly the same content as their members could. What that actually led to was that they were having to kick people out of having access to that content, and that was really not helping their recruitment, because generally the people that they were kicking out were hot prospects for membership because they were interested in the content the organisation was serving up. So in the end, they just found it was easier to have no online members area and gave up on trying to gate content, which eliminated one of their most significant opportunities to get information out to their members in an organised way. So that lack of integration, which really flowed from the fact that the CRM didn't do the fundamental B2B management that they needed, was absolutely impacting everything they did. So again, all of those technical challenges were leading into business challenges. They were finding it really difficult to articulate member value. They wanted to equip their reps to be able to go out and say to people, such and such person at a different organisation was getting X number of people along to our events and downloading this many resources and providing training to this numbers of people. They just couldn't get that data. So they were sort of doing it by anecdote, but they weren't able to do it with any evidence. They didn't have enough contacts within member businesses. I think that was largely because they couldn't serve up that portal content, and that put them at significant risk of members leaving if key contacts left because they didn't know enough people in their member organisations. But it also hindered them in doing their more bread and butter activities. They couldn't get people along to events, and events was obviously a key revenue generation activity, and they just couldn't deliver the organisation's main mission around providing opportunities to network and training, because they weren't reaching as many people as they should have been. They had similar challenges to the professional case study that I've described around poor communications and reporting, and perhaps most difficult for the organisation was that they were beginning to get very negative feedback from members during annual surveys about the organisation. So they were seen as old-fashioned. They had the word irrelevant come up, which, you know, was obviously quite hard to swallow. And we were told privately that there was a sense among the sector that the organisation was a bit of an old boys network and wasn't really able to create any real corporate value, which was obviously something that their leadership team wanted to address. So the scope of the project to overcome this. So firstly, a big focus was implementing a CRM that could cater for their B2B requirements. And actually that wasn't very difficult for Smart Impact. Our technology stack's based on Dynamics 365, which has huge amounts of B2B capabilities out of the box, and just giving them access to some of the standard functionality in a modern CRM system unlocked huge potential for them, particularly around knowing who worked for who and therefore the marketing potential of that information. They also went through a big process to reorganize their data to reflect how the trade association worked. I think in this we were acting as a bit of a catalyst. This wasn't the work that we necessarily did, but we gave them a reason to really spend a lot of time reviewing the data that they did have, creating very solid links between individuals and organisations where they could, and archiving a lot of that orphaned, redundant data. So by investing that time in improving their data, when they went live with the new system, they had a much better, clean data set to start with. And obviously there was a strong focus on member communications. That website and portal challenge was absolutely key, but they also wanted to improve their email campaigns, improve their understanding of how people were interacting with them on social media, and we were able to focus in on those issues. So obviously a key focus of the project was an integrated website portal. Again, we were working alongside them to support some internal work that they were doing around persona generation. So they were creating different personas for the different people that they wanted to target within their organizations, corporate contacts, technical contacts, etc. And we were able to create ways for them to find those people in CRM, and this enabled them to get more people to events, get the right content in front of employee members, and to track what was being consumed. This organisation also really went to town on using the project as an opportunity to promote to members what they were doing to improve how they worked. So their regional managers spent months ahead of going live with the system talking to members about the new portal and the benefits that it would deliver. They ran some focus groups to solicit ideas for what the site should actually contain. We weren't actually involved in this, but we were able to use some of the outputs of that to support UX and user journey work. They undertook direct member testing, so they brought in a small number of their members to actually test the system before it went live, and that gave them the opportunity to get some really nice quotations from members about what they were doing. And then they undertook a highly coordinated launch of the new site, lots and lots of publicity, and sort of went on a bit of a charm offensive with members to get them to log in and see the benefits, which I think is really important. So overall, this project completely reformed how they were operating, gave them a new portal tool that transformed their day-to-day activity and how members were able to engage with them. And they also used it as a launch pad to engage more objectively with their members. So look, I hope that was helpful and described some of the ways that we've helped professional membership organisations to overcome some of the pitfalls associated with legacy membership systems, and also to expand on some of the things Alan described. I'm now going to hand over to Steve to answer some of the burning questions that we're often asked by organisations when they set out on this journey. Steve.
Thanks, Jeremy. Right, so my slides have come over, which is good. Let me just do one more thing, then I can see what I'm doing. So what I'm going to cover is some of the frequently asked questions that come up each time we engage with organizations that are thinking of, should they be replacing the system? Should they be investing in what they've got? Why are they moving, and so on? So I'll cover 4 questions. So the obvious first one is, look, I've got something which may be not doing what I want. It may be okay. It may not have a future, but should I invest in that or should I replace it, and how do I decide? And it's not a simple question, and we've covered this in some other of our previous webinars, so by all means look at those in detail if you want more detailed responses. But the reality is that quite often we see that from a particular start point, it's quite often about the same cost to invest in that and to get it to where you want to, rather than just replace it. And it's about as much work as well for you and your staff. And the reason for that is quite often that you've got to fix a lot of things before you can build on them. So you've got to check the foundations again and put them in place. Whereas obviously if you replace it, if you choose your right supplier correctly, you should have good foundations anyway. But we come across this quite a lot. So the cost generally isn't that different. But the key question really is, do you really believe that if you can invest in what you've got, where things may not have gone as you'd wish, can it really deliver what you want? Can it meet your goals, your strategies? With your current supplier step up to get there? Can the technology get there as well? And this is becoming really important at the moment because we're seeing 2 main things. We're seeing a lot of disturbance in the market with particular suppliers who are going through quite a hard time, I think, because of things that have happened over the last few years to them, COVID notwithstanding being one of them as well. But the other side is technology. It's no surprise that AI has become enormous over the last year. A number of good technology platforms can support really great AI, and the investment's already there, and the investment is going to be more and more in the future. So things like Dynamics, which is what we do, is very, very strong in this area. But obviously your supplier needs to be also strong in that area. And at Smart Impact, we're already developing and we're already delivering AI-based solutions for various things like certifications and proof points and so on. But the question therefore is, can you see that you can get to the end with your current supplier and your current technology, or do you need to replace it? And the answer quite often is you can get there with the same technology. Maybe you just change the supplier, or maybe you do need to change both. But the reality is, if you're where you are because you believe you haven't invested what's really required to do it, because these things are not cheap, they shouldn't be ludicrously expensive either, but you've got to put sufficient money in. If you haven't put sufficient money into your platform, you can't blame it or your supplier, really. So that can unlock and then take you where you need to go to. If you think you have put sufficient or maybe more money than you thought, and we've heard some quite horror cases recently about how much investment has been made in what started off as quite cost-efficient systems. If the main problem really is the supplier or foundation, then you're probably going to have to bite the bullet, change one or the other, and so on. So when we look at changing to another thing, that's really because you've got to work out what the best way of reaching your business goals and your strategy is. If your current system can do it, great. If you need to replace it, then that's what you're going to need to do. So thinking about changing, is it as easy as the new suppliers are promising? So once again, there's no clear answer. It depends on your own particular circumstance. But in a number of situations where people have decided to move, there's two routes. And again, we cover this in previous webinars in more detail, but you can achieve a gradual migration in some cases, and on others, you've got to replace it all as one big lump. And it really depends on a number of different things, such as how modular your current system is. So can you swap out jigsaw pieces of it? So you could swap out a core membership renewals thing, swap out an events part, swap out a CPD part, and replace them with modular solutions. So is what you've got modular? Is what you're buying modular, and therefore can you migrate module by module? Or if it's more monolithic, as quite a lot of traditional systems and also some dynamic systems are, if they are monolithic, you may have to replace larger parts of it in one go. What we try to offer is we've got a very modular set of products that do events, CPD, qualifications, certifications, and so on and so on. So we can plug those in and get a gradual migration quite easily. But again, it depends upon where you're coming from. It also depends on your relationship with your current supplier. It depends on whether you've got the rights to use the software once you've split that relationship, and the rights to develop that software once you've split the relationship. So there's a number of different things that we can advise you on there. So it's not easy, but one thing is, we've done hundreds of projects, and they pretty much all have come from replacing something else. And out of those, we've also done recently 20 or so Dynamics replacements, where we've kept the same core technology, but we've bit by bit replaced, or big bang replaced, the current overlay functionality with our own modules and so on, because it was deemed more cost effective there. But we've also got a lot of customers where we haven't replaced everything. We still support their old system as it was, because their scenario enabled that, and then we can migrate them piece by piece. So that's the background to it. I've mentioned goals and strategies a few times. So what's the key difference really? So the difference is how you get there. So the goal is really what you're trying to achieve, the results that your business is aiming to get, and how the system, you have to decide how the system can underpin it. And the strategy is the method that you're going to get there. So that's where the system becomes a very key thing. But it's not just the system, it's you, your supplier, your integration, the quality of your data, all of the other things as well that you need to get in place so that you can start to achieve your business goals. So really, if we're talking about money, how do you go back to your board or go back to your trustees and say, look, we've got to, I know we invested stuff, we now need to invest more in it to get it to where we need it to be, or we need to invest more in it to replace it with something else. And these are the reasons. So again, it's what we advise every organization to do in the first place: list your goals, list your strategies to get there, and then try to tie the system and investment and the functionality and what new things the system should bring you in delivering those goals. And then you can start to cost justify it, because there's a strong business case there. And the point is here that you've essentially got to obviously prove it's easier to replace, if you want to replace, than stay where you are. That's the fundamental thing we're doing here. So this is a business project. This isn't a tech project. You're looking at business case, business finance, and therefore how the tech underpins that. But it's not a tech project. And the other thing, obviously, to bear in mind is, whichever route you're taking, stay with what you want or what you've got or replace it, is really down to whether you believe that your current system can grow and support what you want. And as I say, not just now, and not just your requirements you decided on a few years ago, but thinking about the future, AI, growth, development, cost effectiveness, so that you're not constantly investing in your system as one bespoke system, because you should hope you've got a supplier who's doing this for hundreds of different organizations, so you get a big economy of scale. So that's goals and strategies. And then the final one we get to is justifying the spend. So I've preempted this a little bit, but it's about goals, problems. If you can't do a number of the strategic things that you want to do, such as Jeremy was covering in the case studies he just mentioned, if you can't achieve those, what's that costing you? Are you losing members because they can't renew easily online? Are they not getting benefit statements, so they're not really finding the value for money? If you're B2B, can the lead members at your different organizations manage the other members so that you're getting a big traction in each of your organization members that you've got? So if the lead goes, you still have good, loyal members in there who can become the next lead. So there's a number of different things there, and you have to put a value on not being able to achieve those, or the benefit that will bring when you can achieve those. And that's how you start to justify your system plan. So some typical goals that you'd be going for, we get these a lot in tenders we see, we get these a lot in other conversations that we're having, but there's a lot of change going on in the market, and there's a lot of competition coming into the market from another area of tools. So your members can quite often find what you do for them elsewhere. So how do you deal with that? So it's about agility, changing business direction, and having a system that can support that. Having really focused marketing that can do that, growing demographies, and we come across time and time again the new member or the student member conversion to full member, and our membership is getting older and older. It's 5 years older every 5 years. How do we get new members in? So it's those sort of things. So again, we can talk to you about what we think key goals are in your organization, but most organizations get this really well now. So those are the main points that we would cover. If I just quickly move on to Q&A, I noticed we've got a question, and I'll preempt this, Alan. We've got a question from James Stoy, which is about how do you address entrenched behavior? So the question basically is, how do you address resistance from internal staff towards change, particularly when you get we've always done it this way? Now, this comes up in every project. You have to do a whole range of different techniques to manage and infuse people, but it's about showing them the art of the possible, about what any new system should be able to do for them. and then giving them personal wins and business wins for their department and organizational wins for the whole membership association, so that you're starting to get that buy-in. But first you start with what their personal benefits are. And we've got some good examples at the moment. We've got customers where they've got 4 different event systems. We've got customers where they did have 10 different payment methods through direct debit and so on and so on. So we talk about consolidating them, giving examples from previous customers and the changes and the benefits we've introduced in there. But it's very key. You've got to get buy-in. You've got to take enthusiastic staff with you and make them into champions so that they absolutely get behind the new project. So it's a good question from James. It's a long answer, and I haven't got so long to answer it right today. But again, maybe that's something we can pick up at a later date. So, Alan, other questions? You're on mute, Alan.
We've only got time for one, I think. We've got one of the main questions that's come up 2 or 3 times in the pre-event questions. Do I have to replace everything in order to take advantage of my my CRM migration, and do I have to do a big bang approach? Jeremy, do you mind if I pose that question to you?
Yeah, sure thing, Alan. I mean, the answer is that it depends on the current situation that an organization finds itself in, so are they trying to decommission a existing system and bring something new in that case, generally because of data dependencies and data constraints, a big bang approach is the way to go. For organizations that, for instance, are using Dynamics 365 but not happy with how it's been implemented, often there are ways that a more graduated change can be approached. So it will depend on your specific requirements. Let's have that discussion and find out where you are and what you're looking to achieve, and whether or not we can, which direction is the way to go.
Right. Thank you, Jeremy. I'm conscious we're overrunning, so Steve, I have to hand back to you just to wrap it up.
Fine. So basically, thank you for attending. We've got a whole range of events coming up, and we've also got a load of historical events, which are all published, all available at the same website. You can download them, you can watch them on demand and so on. So please do join us again, but also look back over the history that we've covered. And really, that's it. If any of you would like any formal or offline conversations or informal conversations, please just approach us. We will be sending out the slides and the recordings, and we'll just reach out to you if you want to carry on conversations. Please let us know, and we'd be delighted to talk to you. But thanks very much for staying with us and watching this session. Hope it was useful for you. Bye-bye.
Right.